Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. 1, 2, test. Test 1, 2. 1, 2, test. Test 1, 2. 1, 2, test. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. 1, 2, test. Okay. Test 1, 2. 1, 2, test. All good? Very good.
Test, 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 test. I'll just stick my face right here. What if I'm just like right here? Okay. That works.
set this up for Scott, but let me.
All right.
Welcome, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. Late afternoon, whatever it is. We're glad to see you here. I want to start with a few thanks. People are mentioned in your program, but I feel like they deserve a little bit more than a few words. Thank you for joining the celebration of Bob Stull's life. We, in fact, never discussed plans for a memorial service, because Bob remained focused on living. We believe he would be satisfied with tonight's gathering because there is an enormous amount of food. And yeah, those of you who've known him for a while know that if he came in that door, he would make a beeline for that buffet table. So snacks are out. We're going to have a few little words from a few people, and then there, if you can stay, there is really a lot of food down there.
Vegetarian options as well.
Yes, and we're just going to rip all those covers off and see what's there. Heartfelt thanks to Crossroads Bar and Grill at the end of the road is one of Bob's favorite places to eat. A really hardworking crew that makes just delicious, basic food. We worked with Becky, who did a great job incorporating some of our own products from our own farm into the meal, which was really nice, and including us in her recipe plans. And then the master himself drove the truck and made the delivery. Yeah, thank you to John White for always playing so beautifully. And also to David Neal, who is here. I asked him if he would lead our sing-along, just in case a few of us had our tonsils up in our adenoids by that time, as sometimes happens. David will lead our sing-along of Home on the Range. All are welcome to join. It's printed on the other side of your program, right? And as Pete Seeger would say, you sing your version and I'll sing my version. Everything will work out fine in the end. Pete, yeah. I want to introduce the family members who are here. Bob's oldest son, Chuck, his wife, Susan Pozo, and their daughter, Maria Pozo Stull. Middle son, Steve, and partner, Jean. Huh? And youngest son, Scott, his wife, Lori Hemmings, and daughter, Emma Carol Stull. The Carol is for Steve's mother, who passed away a while ago. Next on the program, we have a few words from Scott, where it just says remarks. And so I'd like to welcome Scott to the microphone.
I know, I just have to figure out how to do this. Nope, that's it. Okay, you got it? All right. I want to thank everybody for being here. I don't have like formal written out things to say, so I'm just going to talk until I finish. I promise I won't take too long.
I'll start playing the music.
You know, it's not like those, like all those time for a commercial. So the legacy that we all carry is what we're looking at in this room. This is what Dad brought to us, and we're all here because of him. This building we're in, the trees out on the lawn, these are all part of what he created. And he was not a community unto himself, but he was a key person in all of this. what's really amazing is looking at the bigger life course that he went through. Neither of his parents graduated from high school, and he got a graduate degree in chemistry, which created a completely different life for him. I got a note from his sister, Frida, who couldn't be here because she lives in central Illinois where they all grew up, and that she said they're all really proud of his accomplishments. And, you know, my brothers and I, we just like, oh, this is just normal. You know, it's just how it is. But his dad worked as a railroad lineman. His first, it's like his time of elementary school, he went to 6 different places because his dad would get his job bumped by somebody and he'd go to another town where the railroad provided his housing. The house that he grew up in was an old switch house along the side of the railroad track in Sherman. It's not there anymore because it was apparently a piece of crap. But, I mean, I grew up in the beautiful suburbs of Buffalo, New York, and Amherst. You know, there's some pictures that you'll see of those times. And I never thought about it as oh yeah, his father had to grow a 1/4-mile long garden along the side of the railroad tracks because they didn't have enough food otherwise. And he created a completely different life. And my brothers and I, we all have graduate degrees, which is not what where he started. He told me this one story one time that he had this really weird feeling that something was wrong at home. He didn't know what it was about. And so he called my mom and she said, no, everything's fine here. And at the end of the day, he got in touch with his mom and she said, yeah, one of your best friends from high school was just killed in an accident digging a ditch. And she was really struck by the idea that if he hadn't gone off to college and all the rest of that, he would have been there in that ditch right next to him and he probably wouldn't be here. How he knew something was wrong gets into that whole, you know, how is life weird kind of thing. It's like we don't understand how it all works. But that's where he came from. And this is where he ended up, creating this amazing place. One thing that my mom said, they're sitting out on the deck having a cup of coffee, and said, it's like living at a resort. And just looking out at the view and how delightful it was. When we got here, this was open fields. You know, there's nothing. There's an old dairy barn here, the inside of which I understand is on the cover of a country music album. Yeah. This is what he created. One of the things that came up was like, where did we get to? How did he get to be the person he is? And so, like almost everyone, we are the descendant of immigrants. I'm trying to track this one back. Tracking back the Stull family is really hard because there's a bunch that all have the same names. And it's like, oh, well, there's this James Stull, and then there's his son, James Stull, and then there's his grandson, James Stull. Which one are we talking about? Okay, well, it's no different one. Yeah. But the Stull family came over from Germany, probably somewhere near Heidelberg. And my daughter's giving me trouble because I like Heidelberg bread from, you know, Mohawk Valley. She said, it's so funny that you like that. I thought I had it figured out, And I was just looking it over, it's like, oh, wait a minute. So we have one of the James Stulls born in Maryland in 1725. I'm pretty sure that's right, because he also has his son, James Stull. And then his grandson, James Stull. But I got a picture of that one. His father, Adam, came over from this little town in Germany called Neunkirchen, which means 9 churches. It's just east of Heidelberg. But he came over in 1727. So somewhere there's a disconnect. It's like, are the dates wrong? Are the ages wrong? You know, we've got the passenger manifest, but that's pretty clear that someone named Hans Adam Stull with 2 other adult family members, which is more than 15, came over in 1727. But is that actually my ancestor, or is it somebody else that we haven't quite figured out? But at least from the 18th century, they're all farmers. They come in, they're going to Conestoga in Pennsylvania. You've heard of the Conestoga wagon? It's named for those Germans who settled in Pennsylvania, who then went west, and they took the name from the Native American Susquehannock people that, you know, of course, Europeans can't figure out how to say anything right. They then went to Indiana, and we had 2 generations in Indiana, and then they get to Illinois, and they're there for the rest of their time. That's the Stull side. His mom, Mary Ellen McHugh, full Irish, her grandfather, Hugh McHugh, came over check the date. I've got it, I actually wrote it down so I wouldn't get it wrong. In 1851. He was 9 years old, so he came with his family. Irish potato famine. Came over, brought the whole family. There was some weird moving around. They spent a little time in England before coming over here. And they came right out to Illinois in Logan County, and they were there. Then the McHughes have been there ever since, and there's still like a gazillion McHughes. I did some poking around in the McHugh family, and one of the things that we had sort of believed is that it was McHugh that, you know, somebody had to figure out, and so they just said McHugh, but it's not. There are McHughs back in Ireland at least 200 years before this. It's right in the border area between the current Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. So the McHughes have a deep history in that Scotch-Irish border area, and I'm pretty certain that it probably goes back to, you know, the ancient kingdom of Dalriada, which was half in Ireland and half in Scotland, which is where we get the name Scots-Irish in the first place. They were all farmers. Dad worked on his uncle's farm when he was a teenager, and, you know, another little story. His one of the co-workers said, "Oh my God, it's the boss's nephew. He's not going to be able to do crap." And at the end of the day, he's like, "I tried to keep up with him." So he worked hard. But there wasn't a lot of opportunity for him. So Korean War was happening. He enlisted in the army. He was going to be a combat engineer. And he said, "Okay, I'm not coming back." Because the combat engineers are the guys who go out in front of the infantry to like build stuff. And, you know, the likelihood of survival was exceptionally low. And they went through and they said, "Can anybody here type?" And Dad had taken a typewriting class, He got his lowest grade in high school in typing. We actually have his high school grade book and diploma in one little folder. He got a C one semester and a B the other semester. Everything else he got B's and A's. And so that pulled him out of combat engineers and they made him a clerk. And then they're like, okay, so now what have you done? What are you good at? And so I loved chemistry. So they put him in the chemistry lab and he processed all the work. He did all of the tests. He was about to get sent to Korea. He was stationed in Japan. A couple times there are some pictures from Japan that are there. And then they signed the armistice, so he didn't have to go. He got on a boat, he came back. He never saw the upper decks because he was testing all of the soldiers for communicable diseases before they got to the US. And it took him that long. He got a job at the hospital because of the work that he'd done in the Army, and then he applied to college at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And his co-workers, when they tell his boss that they were going to leave, the boss would fire them on the spot. It's like, nope, no 2 weeks notice, you're just out of here. So he didn't tell his boss until the Friday before classes started. It's like, well, it's my last day. Oh. So he went to college, majoring in chemistry. In one of his chemistry classes, he met my mom, Carol Jean Gans, who's, that family has a deep history at the University of Illinois. They've got like at least 3 generations on the honor roll. Very different, but they clicked. He got his degree, and then they got married in June of 1958. I asked Dad at one point what his favorite place in the world was, and he said, I'm guessing it's got to be Urbana, because that's where I met your mom. I asked him if he'd ever had any other girlfriends, and he said no. And, he had literally one person. And she died 22 years ago from cancer. And one of the very last things he said to her was, I'll see you in 20 years. He was pretty close, 22. I don't know anything about the afterlife or where we go after this, but I hope they're together. He then went on, got his graduate work, first in Texas, and Chuck was born in Texas, and then he went on to Wisconsin, where Steve was born, and then got a job in Evanston, where I was born, and then they moved to Buffalo, where he was the director of chemistry at first at Deaconess Hospital, and then that got absorbed into Buffalo General. Then in 1984, he got a job at Tompkins Community Hospital, now known as Cayuga Health, across the way. We got pretty early on a telescope, and just to look, because we've got wonderful things to look at. And there were days where Mom would look through the telescope and see if his car was in the parking lot, or if she needed to call him to tell him to come home. He eventually retired and spent all of his time working in the fields. I was doing my graduate work for a lot of this, and so I was living in the house, and I would call them in when it was dark and said, you need to eat now. When Mom passed away, he kept doing farming for as long as he could. 10 years ago, he had a stroke that slowed him down, It probably didn't slow him down enough, because there was one day where he wanted to go look at the asparagus patch, and he was out there and he fell down, and I went and found him like an hour later, and, you know, I heard the call and I ran down there, and as I was running, I said to Lori, bring the car. She didn't know what was going on, but she's like, okay. I said, Dad, you can't do that anymore. If you're gonna go do something, tell somebody. So he began adjusting to the, no, I can't just go do whatever I want anymore. But every year, he would be the guy sitting cleaning the garlic, either in the barn or in the garage. That was something he could do, and he loved doing it. And he always did it. He did it with my daughter Emma, who would help as she could when she was, you know, this tall, and then, you know, could do a lot more later. One of the things that Emma said to me is that whenever she picks tomatoes, she thinks of him, because that's what they did. And you smell tomatoes, and it's like, oh, that's Bob. If given a choice between chocolate chip cookies and tomatoes, I don't know what he would have done. He probably would take both. The last 10 months were pretty hard. He went over to get a checkup at the hospital and had another stroke. And I mean, it's good that it's like, it's gonna happen, but that can't do much better than that. And so he was in and out of the hospital and nursing rehabilitation, all that for what became the rest of his life. There are a couple times I wasn't sure he was gonna come home, and you know, he bounced back with the help of modern medicine, and I cannot thank all of the healthcare providers enough for the time that they gave to us for him. Over at Cayuga Ridge Nursing Home, they said, we wish we had an entire wing full of Bobs, because he was nice. And that was the thing that I said, you're their favorite patient because you're nice. And he said, there's no reason not to be nice to people. That's why you're here. That's why we're here. That's why this place is here, because of who he was. And I can't think of a better legacy than that. So he will live on through us and the people that we know that know him. So that's where we are. That's all we can ask for. Thank you.
Can I do this? Is there going to be an accident? We have two short people in a row, so it's okay. All right. We are delighted to welcome Reverend Cynthia Weaver, representing the First Presbyterian Church of Ithaca, where Bob and Carol were devoted and active members for many years. Cynthia is also our neighbor, a few doors down, and she came numerous times to visit and talk with Bob when he was unable to get out. We are so delighted to have you with us today.
I am delighted to have been invited here today. And also, Scott, thank you, because I got to know your dad mostly during his retirement years when he wasn't out in the field. And I loved almost every time I would ask to hear the story of how he came to have this land. And I just loved hearing that time and time again, so thank you. Bob and Carol were both very active in our church. First Presbyterian Church of Ithaca, where I am on the pastoral staff. They joined the church in 1986, and in preparing for this, I went through some of our files and found forms that were given to the congregation long before I ever arrived on the scene. You could tell by the technology that was used to copy the forms, the old mimeograph machines. And among other things, they asked the people, there were long lists of various things, but what were their experiences, what are their skills, what are their interests? And Bob listed his interests as reading, hiking, music, and would you believe gardening? And now I have a clear understanding of what a heritage that is for the family. They were both active, both Carol and Bob, in the church life. Carol was a member of the choir, and apparently Bob appreciated the choir's offerings from his seat in the pews. You folks would know better than I whether it was a good thing that it was only Carol who sang in the choir. It really was. But Bob did serve the church in his own ways. He was elected to be on the board of deacons. These are the folks who help the pastor or pastors take care of the congregation, visiting folks when they're in the hospital or unable to get to church, sending cards of support, as well as being involved in some outreach efforts into the larger community outside the church walls. So again, Bob taking care of others, being kind to the people. He also served as an elder, which in our tradition is a word for the people who are elected by the congregation to be the decision-making body of the church. In our structure, as I said, the congregation elects those people, and we like to think that these are folks who are able to put their own opinions or their own wishes aside in order to determine what they believe is God's will for the decisions they are to make. And so it takes a maturity and an ability to think beyond the self. So Bob served in that role also. These are the folks who make decisions about how the church and its resources are used. This is the board that has decided in recent years that our church would be a good place for Open Doors English, which is English as Second Language program, and Ithaca welcomes refugees. And Bob served on the committee, on the group, that would make these kind of decisions about how this group of people, this congregation, would be parts and contributors to the community. Now, even when he was not serving a term on one of our elected groups, he was still serving the church, having volunteered his time on the Building and Property Committee, the Organ and Sanctuary Committee, and offering to be a substitute greeter on Sunday mornings, being the one that's the first impression somebody has when they step across the threshold. Now, I've mentioned the way that Bob has served our church, but I don't want to give you the impression that what matters most in our faith is what we do on Sunday mornings, or even what we do in an official church capacity. We believe that how we live our lives is one of the true marks of our faith. And we understand that when in Genesis God gave dominion over the earth and all its life to humankind, it means that we are to be the caretakers of God's creation here on earth. So that each time we step on this property at 2622 North Trip Hammer Road, our jaws drop open in awe at the beauty around us, and we see what good stewards and caretakers of this piece of creation Bob and Carol, and now the next generation, have been and are. As you know, Bob and Carol were both founding members of the Finger Lakes Organic Growers Co-op. And so his interest was not just in gardening, but also in gardening in a way that the land, the crops, and the people who ate what they grew were well cared for. This was stewardship. This is what we are called to do in our faith. And this was putting his faith into action. And so, Bob, to quote from the Gospel of Matthew, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And I'd like to close with a prayer. O Lord, support us all the day long until the shadows lengthen and the evening comes, and the busy world is hushed, and the fever of life is over, and our work is done. Then in your mercy, grant us a safe lodging and a holy rest and peace at the last. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord, our light, and our life. Amen.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Really beautiful. I want to just pause briefly, and I see beloved fellow farmers market vendors leaning against the wall. We know firsthand what it takes to pack up at the end of a Saturday market with a truck full of perishable goods that had to be taken somewhere safe and stored somewhere safe. And then you have to decide, are you going to drive the damn truck here, or do you possibly have another vehicle that's operational? Believe me, we've been there, and your presence here is very, very precious to us. I just have a little story here, and then we're going to sing. We're all going to sing Home on the Range. It doesn't matter. Bob was told, as was my own father, when he was young, that he was tone deaf and he couldn't sing. This is one of the greatest crimes that we commit, because the reality is, everybody can sing. Steve will show you how. Here's my story about one incident. For a long time, Bob struggled with hearing loss. It became quite severe. And we finally found someone who could help him after many stalled attempts. We found Phil, just down at the end of the road here, who was able to design and order a set of rather advanced hearing aids that actually worked. We ordered them after testing, and I drove Bob down to have the new devices installed and tuned. I was holding my breath. Phil played all the usual beeps and bleeps, adjusting, improving, asking many questions along the way. Bob responded to all, and I began to breathe. Okay, this is the hard part. I'm going to quote half of a Victorian sonnet. I'm sorry, English majors. Phil turned away from the screen and he said, "Give me your tired, your poor." So you may join in. "Your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." Now, I'm an older sister, and I kind of think I know everything. So I said, to Bob, "Do you know what that's from?" And he gave me one of his, "I'm not stupid, you know," kind of looks. And he said, "It's from the statue." Okay, let us sing. The lyrics are on the back of your program, and there are enough verses that you'll learn everything. I want to call your attention to verse 4. There's a little change of tune. This is an arrangement that my mother used to sing. There's a little change of tune, and it goes into this little descanty kind of thing. Don't be alarmed. Everything fits together, and the refrain is home, home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play. All right?
And I have that change right on here.
I hope so. Otherwise, just sing it regularly.
Right.
David, you are an epic problem solver. So David, as you know, if you come to our events, David has sung lead roles in many of our shows, and he did a really sweet thing for a professional singer. He volunteered and beautifully performed the non-singing role of the guy in Camelot.
The guy in
Merlin,
Camelot, yeah.
the guy in Camelot. And there was no song for him, and he was absolutely wonderful. All right, David.
All right.
Yeah.
Are you coming over? So we're doing it in D major.
D major. So
Yeah,
that
D
if
major.
you have the sheet music in front of you, we're doing it in D major, not E major. Since we have a bass
Hope that's
baritone
okay for
instead-
everybody. Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. Home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. How often at night the heavens are bright with the light from the glittering stars, have I watched there amazed and asked as I gaze if their glory ascends and above. Oh, give me a land where the bright lions stand, flows leisurely down the stream, where the graceful white swan was riding along like a maid in a heavenly dream. Then I would not exchange my home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. Home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all
Thank you, John. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone. There's a ton of food. There's lots to eat and drink. It's pulled pork, vegetarian enchiladas, mac and cheese, potato salad with some of our potatoes, not all our potatoes, some, and then some salad with some of our tomatoes and some salad.
And although chocolate was Bob's favorite food, we also do our
Apple
apple crisp.
crisp is for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's still, I think, some other
Still
little
other things
snacks.
out
and food.
there.
So please stay. We can move chairs around so you don't have to be in the audience for. But feel free to adjust it. There's some little tables up allowed.
Yeah,
Thank you for
chat
being
with each
here.
other, share.
Share stories. You probably have a
Have
few.
fun.